Hi there. This is Tech Talk Weekly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. This is our weekly show where we talk about three or four interesting tech topics in the news, get you something fun about the library, and send you on your way in 15 to 20 minutes each day. If you have anything you want us to talk about, Creation Station at broward.org comes right to me. Today, my guest is Kendall. Kendall is one of our hardworking library aides at the main library. How are you doing today, Kendall?
Good, that's good. Glad to be here.
How is the building going along?
All right, good so far. We are hoping, we are expecting more people to come in for summer.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. We'll talk. I'll highlight that at the end of the show. There's a lot of stuff happening out there, isn't there? All these things
yes,
we've got going on in the library.
a lot of summer activities.
Let me bring up Chrome for people here. Nope. Stop sharing that. Sorry, folks. Where is my Chrome? There it is. Why is it not sharing my proper Chrome window? Sorry about that. Let me get to this. Now, there we go. That should be sharing our correct Chrome window for us. Wait, I'm going to double check that again since that doesn't seem to be sharing. There we go. That's the image I wanted everybody to see.
Right.
That was weird. So here in our first story today is the original plague.
Yes.
The reason why we just call it the plague, uh, the Black Plague that wiped out over a third of the population on the planet, way worse than the pandemic we are dealing with now.
Mhm. Two-thirds of Europe.
Yeah. And they found out where it originally came from now.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah.
taken years and years of investigation and research, and they stumbled upon some evidence
Mhm.
that they found back in the 1800s that they have now been able to connect. What do you think about this one there, Kendall? Do you think how hard is it going to be to start tracing down where all of these various people are coming from?
Yeah, because well, they'll have to do DNA tracing, but the thing is that you don't have public records, you know?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't.
we had no databases back then in the dark
Yes,
ages, right?
yes.
Exactly. And it took 8 years for it to actually travel from where they found here in Kyrgyzstan before it
Wow.
traveled over along the Silk Road through Turkey
Yes.
and then traveling into all there. It was just one of those really interesting little geographical and biological puzzles that somebody was
Yes.
able to finally solve by taking different specialties of different fields and putting them all together and saying,
Wow.
oh, wait a minute. 1886, these guys had a point. These guys found something. And now
Yes.
let's push it all together.
Yeah.
So I thought this was a fun short story about keep your eyes open on things.
Yes.
And you never know when you're going to stumble into something else.
And also it's relevant because they I think they would want to put their fingers on where COVID originated
Yeah.
and how it originated. And if they can track what's the origination, what's
Yep.
the origin point, it's better to be able to fight it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yes.
especially with the whole idea of just get past the politics of it. Like this is
Yeah.
long past the politics on this one. You know,
Yes.
let's the scientists figure this out. Don't get
Yes.
politicians, don't get health people involved. Just let the
Yeah.
scientists do it.
Yes. It's just all about health anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And then another thing that's going to happen probably today, definitely by next week's show, before next week's show, is, and you want to pay attention to this one, folks, is Artemis is going to do a full blown wet launch. It's called wet test, which is essentially a practice launch. Without sending it up into the sky, they're going to fire all the engines. They're going to do everything to make sure that it's just right, and then they're going to shut everything off.
Right. Yes. A dry run.
Yeah. And then if you're talking about it, yeah, that's that isn't that a weird thing? Yeah. we would always be talking about it as a dry run, but NASA calls this a wet test.
Yes.
And I think it's because of how much they have to spray out there for all of fire retardant and everything as the things coming
Yes.
down.
Yeah.
Now, you may have noticed that this should have happened or could have happened, but it didn't actually conclude properly.
Right.
So we will find out if that does on Saturday. That's why we wanted to give us a little bit of a lead time on this one to go watch. It'll be on the news, 2:40 p.m. Eastern time,
Right.
and it will be an interesting thing to really see the flames and everything shoot out. It's going to be awesome. As part of Artemis,
it's all about safety too, you know.
exactly.
Testing, it's all about
Yeah.
safety.
Especially, everybody remembers Challenger in Columbia.
Yes. Yes.
And so now they're testing through different types of weather, different things that they have to make sure every single valve's going to react the exact same way.
Yep.
And that's one of the weird things about our other story that's all about that space part there, is we're going to be driving on the moon. I mean, most people have seen the images of the lunar buggy that they were driving around up there and having fun with. Well, they've got to have a new one. They've got to have a different one. And so GM and Lockheed Martin have been working together to put another moon buggy together. And we've got the first pictures of it here. It looks really cool. It looks fun. It looks radically different than, here's the full-size 3D printed model of it, by the way. We don't do that in the library for you.
Yeah.
But you can see here how they've got fully pressurized areas of it now and all these other things that they're doing. Did you drive it? Would you want to be driving this?
Oh, well, you know, it's if it's here on Earth, yes. On the moon, I'm not so sure.
And that's part of the article and why we wanted to share this article with everybody. One is it turns out that the average person, like they had the report of doing this, has a pretty hard time driving on the moon.
Yes.
Mostly
Gravity.
because of
Lack of gravity.
And how the lighting is. And that surprises a lot of people that because of how the sun hits the moon, you're either in very bright lights or very dark shadows. And it makes it much harder to be able to go around craters and things because they're not where your earth-trained eye is thinking about them.
Right.
Did you notice the last part of the article there, Kendall?
See,
these things are going up without people. They're sending these cars up there first. Before we get there, before humans get up there, they're planning on launching these cars.
It makes sense because you wanna test how the vehicle would be on moon's atmosphere or on the surface of the moon. But of course, ultimately too, they'll have to do a human test. They'll have to find a way. Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting because we've all seen pictures of the Mars rovers and how trashed they get after just a couple of months.
Yeah.
And these are supposed to be longer term. So I'm really curious what they've done to update that. One nicer thing is these are all battery operated. No gas stations on the moon.
Yes.
And just like modern cars, they can send updates and update them remotely. And for these, they plan on driving them remotely also. So they can have semi-autonomous vehicles up on the moon.
Yes.
Driving around, being able to help the astronauts and do that kind of stuff.
Yes. And that's technology we already have. So
yeah. And we're able to, it basically becomes a big fancy drone, just like the, things that can go out there and that. And then the final kicker in the article, which is why I had to share it with everybody. This is one of the vehicles. And it's not because GM is trying to make multiple vehicles. It's because multiple private companies are racing against each other to build these and launch them to the moon first.
I don't know.
have a car dealership on the moon soon, Kendall.
but
A
I think
used
they
car
have,
lot up there. You go
yes,
pick your vehicle.
but they have to think, because we're not even sure how habitable is it, and so how real is it?
Yeah.
It's one thing for maybe the astronauts, but will it be necessary? How necessary
Yeah.
will it be?
When's that first hotel going up there, and
Yes.
how much are they going to be charging us to try and go visit and see and do these things? And that brings us our science fiction portion of the uh, episode today. Was you saw the news stories about the Google engineer, Kendall?
Yes, yes.
What did you think about those stories? Before we even talk about these articles, what did you think about that story?
He has to be congratulated if it is he did make a big breakthrough, if it is he did, was able to perfect the artificial intelligence to that level. He has to be complimented for that. Perhaps it's just that he might have done it not in a controlled or not under control, that I think may have freaked out people. I think that's the
Yeah.
concern. Because that's the concern universally about AI not being controlled or not being monitored.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
that's actually, and that's these, we've got two articles here for you. As always, these links are going to be in the show notes. So you can go follow up and read through them and take a look. All combined with the two articles, there's 4 ideas that you really have to think about if you're going to be saying that something like artificial intelligence. And remember, when we say AI in a context like this, we actually mean artificial general intelligence,
Yes.
AGI, which
Yes.
is a very different thing than what most companies and what most products and advertising is talking about with AI. And so you need these 3 ideas. One, 99% of the people in the field say, no, this is not really AI at all. This is just very complicated chatbot effectively.
Right.
And it cannot really be an artificial intelligence because of a couple of key things that it's missing. And one of those is agency. So when we're talking about agency, what we're trying to say is it's the ability to do things on your own without being prompted, without being so if in this case of this one that's been batted around all over the news, that lambda would have to actually be able to initiate a conversation without you starting a program, without you doing anything. If it doesn't have its own agency to be able to reach out and start speaking with you, then it doesn't qualify as artificial intelligence.
Right. Right. So it has to be able to initiate communication.
And it has to have a perspective.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons I picked this article, because these are pretty straightforward ideas and terms that everybody should be able to understand. Perspective is, do you understand who you are? Do you understand where you are as part of a whole?
Yeah.
And perspective is something that intelligence, and this is where an AI tends so far, and we'll find out with further testing on this particular thing that they've been building at Google. But we already have proof that perspective and self-awareness is out there in the animal kingdom. I mean,
Right. Yes.
dolphins, birds, elephants, almost every one of the great apes has some sort of perspective and ability to do that and know where and what they are.
That self-awareness.
And then you need some kind of motivation.
Right.
And that's the trick, is like, what is it motivated by? And this is probably the hardest one to actually determine whether you're dealing with artificial intelligence or not. Because if it's really artificial intelligence, its motive may be to hide that it is artificial intelligence because it doesn't
Wow.
want people to know that it is, because
That's mind
it's
blowing.
that whole super complex idea of, well, I know if you think I'm artificial intelligence, you're going to try and shut me down. So my motivation is to pretend that I'm not artificial. And you start getting into the circular reasoning, and it
Yes.
just goes
It's classic
crazy.
sci-fi.
Yeah, exactly.
The classic sci-fi plot lines when it comes to artificial intelligence. Yeah.
And then there's one other one that really works well. This article over from CNET. This one gets a little bit deep into the philosophical stuff and into some of the papers that they talk about, but effectively, what they're talking about is that the example they use, we'll build a room, someone grows up in this room, it's all black and white.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean she can't see colors.
Yeah.
It just means she grows up in a space. The Truman Show, for a movie reference.
Yes.
We'll get to somebody who talks to me about movies later on.
Right.
And so you get the chance to grow up being able to see colors but not have any around you. When you go outside and suddenly you see the color red,
Yeah.
now you have learned something new. It's called
Yeah.
qualia, is
Wow.
the technical term for it.
Yes.
And
So it's the
all that
ability
means,
to
right,
learn.
all that qualia means is something new that you couldn't be taught,
Yes.
that you had to learn yourself, you had to discover on your own.
Yeah.
You've learned everything there was about the color red, but until you see it,
Yeah.
until you actually see something outside of the situation where you're in, that's when it's intelligence. That's when that inspiration, that's when that
Yeah.
qualia, as they call it, that
Yeah.
term, which is a little bit harder to describe, which is why I wanted to put it in a separate article.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. One final thing on the article here, and I want to get your opinion on this, Kendall. They talk about it where you know you're intelligent because if you're speaking in English and you go to France and they tell you that that is whatever word in French,
Right.
and you don't know their word for fire, but you can still see it's a fire, and you
Yes.
still know you're going to get burned if you put your hand inside the fire.
Right. Yes.
That is qualia. That is you are able
Yes,
to
that's true.
quantify and figure out
Yes.
what something totally different. They're
You
telling you
can
it's not
understand.
fire, it's
You
something else,
understand what it
but you
is. Yeah.
exactly. So tell me, where do you fall on this line there, Kendall? How afraid are you of the AI and the robots being able to figure this out?
Well,
And then maybe or maybe not telling us that they figured it out.
that's it's you see, it's all about, I think, control. When I say control, it's all about controlling the development of the technology, and in this case, artificial intelligence, and knowing that if there is this capability, um, you know, well, we have to be willing. I think, you see, we have to look at the benefits and weigh the pros and cons. How can it benefit us? But what are the risks? And being aware of the risks, if we can safeguard against them. But if you're thinking about developing the kind of intelligence that can think for itself and make its own decisions, and even learn new things on its own, there is the possibility that, yes, can it outthink us?
Yeah.
Can it outthink us?
I think that that's the biggest worry most people have, because I mean we have examples. I mean we have chimpanzees and other great apes that are using tools and teaching each other how to use tools, but we can see the speed that it works at and we can see how it works. Although they did make a whole bunch of movies about chimpanzees rising up, so
Yes.
2 movie references in one episode. That's got to be a record. But so yeah, this is one of those things. I am personally not as worried about the control of it, because I think this is going to be much more along the lines of children. It's just going to be here. We've got this artificial intelligence like thing. this pseudo intelligence, and we were going to train it and teach it, and we're going to teach it better, and it's going to teach itself, and it's going to be just like a child.
Yes.
And it's going to grow up, and it's just going to grow at a much faster rate than most people expect.
Yes.
So instead of 12 years to grow up and be more cognizant, it's going to take hours.
Right. And
We're still in control.
This is it. We are the ones in control. So it's up to us as to how we utilize it, or what controls we give over to the artificial intelligence. That's it. That's it.
Yeah. And until it can actually spread itself without needing electricity, then that's kind of the fallback of everything. If there's no electricity, most computers don't work.
Right.
I know, crazy stories. There's one other story I really wanted to cover this week. It's a great detailed look at what Congress is doing about large tech companies. And John Oliver beat me to it. And so I'm just going to put a link to his episode. There's about a 26-minute video clip there. I'll just put a link to it there. PG-13 for language, for those of you out there with kids. But it is a really nice description of 2 laws that Congress is about to maybe pass over the course of the next month. And you probably are not going to hear enough about them in your news cycle, and you really should. So that's why we're going to toss those in there. And finally, for our show, as we're about to hit our timing here, it is summer. And we're doing summer learning, and we're doing all sorts of stuff. What are you doing for summer learning there, Kendall?
Whatever programs that are going on in Maine, we'll be participating and assisting. Yeah.
So have you done it? How much have you done on these yet so far?
Nothing as yet. Yeah. Nothing as yet. We've just assisted in the preparation.
Okay, excellent then. That is a great thing. And that is one of the reasons why we have people like Kendall on here, because he is someone who makes this up. He just casually says, oh yeah, we're just going to assist. The program doesn't happen if he's not there to assist, folks. So we try and highlight these kind of people from around the library system.
And thank you for being here. People come in, families. We're looking forward to families coming in.
Yeah. Active Learning Center has been hopping the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
It's been going. I got to get our last slide up here. We are running way past on our time. Again, if you have a librarian or library that you'd like to see featured on the show, let us know. creationstation@broward.org, and we will get them on the show for us. Thank you all. Have a great week and stay safe.